Good morning, Larry. Oh, here
Good,
we go. Let's get started again. Good morning. So
good morning,
today
Jeff. It's good to see you.
it is really good to see you too. You know, Larry, you don't look any older from when the last time I saw you. So you're looking fabulous.
Really? Okay. I must be
Yeah.
aging. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I think we're all aging at different rates.
Yes. Yes, definitely. And I think the beard is an addition for me, seated on you. Uh, I, uh, I remember you without the beard, I think. So, but
Yeah, and I also used to
I
keep it a
have seen
lot
pictures on
shorter.
Facebook, so I
Yeah.
knew it was there.
Oh, well, good. I used to keep it a lot shorter. And of course, I had all my natural color at one time.
At one time, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we'll just keep it breezy and easy. And whenever you would like to take a break, we can. We can pick up the interview on another day and just kind of continue with that. So we'll go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone here. My name is Jeffery Robinson, and I'm going to be the interviewer today of Larry Norton. Today is Saturday, November 13th, 2021. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you very much.
Larry, I love your background. I know you're up in Canada. Where are you at in Canada?
The city is Kelowna. We're in downtown Kelowna. The picture behind me is of a park. I would like to think that it's through that you're looking, but it's not. Okay. But anyway, it's in British Columbia, so it's in the Pacific time zone, and same as California. And so anyway, it was one time a very nice vacation spot. And in fact, that's how I discovered it. My partner and I had come up here on a vacation, but from a tip of a former girlfriend in the UK. And she said it's the only desert region of Canada. So actually it's not that deserty, but it is warmer, and it's an agricultural area similar to the Great Central Valley of California.
Oh, very cool. So Larry, were you born here in the Central Valley?
Yes, I was born in Bakersfield in 1948, and but we only lived there about 2 years, and my father got a job in El Monte, California, so I went south, but only was there a couple of years there too. And we moved up closer to where my uncle lived, and he lived in an area called Clyde, or it's really known as a part of Port Chicago, California, which no longer exists, by the way. The Navy bought out the town because the ships on the had been loaded with bombs and they exploded, and so the port kind of got destroyed along with all the workers there, which were mostly black. Anyway, yes, I was born in Bakersfield, but we moved eventually to the northern San Francisco Bay Area, and then I came to Fresno.
Very interesting. So Larry, how do you identify? Are you gay, straight, bisexual, queer? What terms do you use to identify yourself?
The label I identify with, which took me a while to find the label, by the way, but it was gay. That's who I am. I'm a happy person. I'm happy with my sexuality. Well, that's who I am. Yeah. I thought for a long time maybe I would be bisexual. To me, that seemed to be the logical thing. But as I grew up and left home, I realized that I'm not bisexual if my response is always toward the masculine male body and male physique, the male personality. This was me. So labels are really tricky things. That's what we choose to call ourselves, but essentially it's a matter of an orientation. And so an orientation depends on a lot of different factors over a number of years, actually. And so it's my sexual orientation that's gay.
Okay. Do you have any preferred pronouns that you like to use?
No, I'm just kind of stuck in the old fashioned. I'm a he, and so, but I don't really want to get stuck on pronouns either. I have not evolved as the newer generations have, and so that's just where I'm at. Yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, I had a hard time back there in the 70s when I was in Fresno the first time, because it was evolving about the transgender folks. And we had fought so hard just for gay liberation that I didn't understand. I was so involved in just the gay identity that I didn't really know what transsexualism was. And even though I had read things about it, it didn't really sink in from any kind of experience I had. I met, when I worked at the Baz, I met a guy who was a hermaphrodite. So I was aware that there are people who are born with both genitalia, a penis and a small opening for vagina. So I know that there's all kinds of people, but I didn't really understand. And so to me, there's this current thing about, you're asking about pronouns, and haven't given it much thought.
Okay. I am interested to know a little bit about your childhood and where you spent most of your childhood and when you first kind of discovered that you had a liking for boys.
Well, that was really, well, a couple of things I need to tell you. I grew up with a Southern Baptist influence, I'll put it that way. And so I had a church influence, and the year before I had my baptism, when I was 10 years old, I had discovered at 9 having an orgasm lying in my bed. And I didn't know anything about this sticky stuff. I just, and so what developed was I was learning about my male body and what it was. And it was a powerful explosion physically. It was something that made me want more of it. I wanted to know if the other boys knew about it. Did they have the same experience? But we couldn't talk about it. Okay, just absolute silence. You couldn't talk to your parents. You couldn't talk to the preacher at church unless you wanted to get a sermon, okay, on how you're a bad person.
That was probably back like around about 1958, 59.
Yes, and 57 is when I think I had the orgasm. 58 is when I had the baptism and become a Christian. Okay, and so I learned to have about the principles of Jesus, who was supposed to be my Lord. Okay, my parents brought me to have them no longer be my Lord and Master. Okay, I had to listen to what Jesus said. What did Jesus tell me? And so you find out through prayer and reading the Bible and learning the principles that Jesus taught. And so to me, the essence was love. Well, what is love? Love is caring for someone else, caring for the other person. And so as long as you had love in your heart, it was your actions were born out of love, then it was okay with the Lord. And so anyway, it was while living in Clyde in the East Bay of San Francisco that I had that. Well, at the time it was in Clayton, outside of Concord. We had lived on a property there, and that's where it actually happened. I had an interest in knowing about the male and female, we lived out in the country, you might say. It was on a large ranch, an old-fashioned ranch. And my father was the caretaker of all the big oleander bushes and the watering or whatever. He did upkeep around the property. And so we had a small house that was away from that. And next to it was a large home. It was probably the original caretaker's home. And they had a family of about 5 boys and 1 girl. Well, the girl was my age. And we did something that I kept secret for many, many years. But we played as a kid. Of course, we played doctor, we play house. And we wanted to pick a girl. And one day we chased after them. And that haunted me because we did get close to getting her panties all the way down. And I thought, this is not Christian. You don't force yourself on somebody. How would you feel if some group, even though it was just a couple of us, try and take down my pants? And, it was like a rape. And I always felt bad about that. And so I wanted to know in the future, as I grew up through my teen years, about the female body, and I never could find out about it. All I knew is I got an erection from like the high school guy in my classroom when the sunlight was coming down on his hairs of his arm. I got turned on by that. That excited me to see that young man's arms just glisten in the sunlight. There was a beauty to it. So anyway, through my teenage years, I looked, but I really didn't touch. And
so, Larry,
so I had to leave home. Pardon?
I'm going to think that there wasn't what we would think of as sex education in high school back in 1957, 58, 59.
No. And even today, I don't even know if it's really a full education, but they certainly know more about it than I did. Just all over the TV and on YouTube or whatever, you can just find out all about what the physical actions can be, and how they control their urges. But still, it's not perfect. I guess it never will be. But no, back in those days, education did not include much about, the so-called birds and the bees. My mother made my father give us the talk, my brother and I. He's a year younger. And so he talked to my brother first, and he went on his way. I don't know what they said. But when he got to me, he said, well, I guess you know really all about, and I don't know, I was probably 15 or something. You must know all about this already or whatever. And so he just wanted me to know that it's important for me to choose a woman who I can love for eternity and that I will care for. And so he didn't go into details. And so that's the education you got. And now we were not necessarily a typical family, but I think pretty much it was widespread. It wasn't just these Okies from Oklahoma that I was born to that were a little bit slow in communicating the facts of life.
So when you started discovering that you had an interest, a liking, a desire, an attraction to other boys, how did you process that? Were you able to say, oh, I'm homosexual, oh, I'm gay? Is this right? Is this wrong?
It was a struggle because the church is telling me it's wrong. Okay. The law is telling me it's wrong. And so I guess it was teenage rebellion. I don't know, but I read the scriptures and I prayed about it. And to me, it was not wrong. To me, like I said, if it's born of love, it's something that's ordained. And so I didn't know for sure if I was going to change. So you see, when you're in your high school years, you think, well, maybe when I'm more free, I will discover that I have an interest in the opposite sex. And so I really wanted to get away from the colleges in the Bay Area. And that's one of the reasons I was kind of directed towards Fresno State. But they had instructor, and I was going to be a music major, and I was a music major. So I got away to Fresno. But even then, it was a struggle for the first couple of years. And it took me until I think I was 30 years old to write home, mind you, to my parents that I have been active in the gay community here, and I am a gay person. I had told them about my work in the peer counseling at the Fresno Gay Community Center, but that kind of looked like I was just doing it for social work experience. And so it's not like I'm one of them, but I can counsel them. And by the way, that's another thing that was a strong thing during my 10-year struggle with it. And it took me 12 years to talk to my parents, is that, oh God, don't lose the thought now. Oh my.
It will probably come back to you in a few minutes.
It will come back to me probably instantaneously, but I was going to make a point there that I've just lost track of. I'm sorry.
So basically, you came to Fresno probably about 1968, 70.
Well, actually, no, I graduated high school in 66. So that fall I was in Fresno. I moved into Holman Hall. It was the only male dormitory on campus. And so it was full of all these gorgeous looking guys. We were two to a room. I was roomed with somebody who was very immature. Yeah, I mean, in a sense of being uneducated in sexuality. And so it was sort of like a closet within Holman Hall. And, but I did start to get out eventually. But what impacted me, I always have to return to the faith I have in the religion. It was like right across the street there on Shaw Avenue was the Southern Baptist Regional Office. And just down the street from that was a Southern Baptist state office. Okay, and so the Southern Baptists looked like they were busy there. And anyway, I went across the street and got involved with the Baptist Student Union. And so that really focused a lot of my attention in 66, 67. But in 67, 68, things started to change. And I found out about places on campus where there was sexual activity going on, such as, you know, the administration building, the psychology building, even the library restroom occasionally would have activity in there, and it would come to my attention. And yes, a few times I was involved. But, you know, it's because of the strong hormones going through the body, I guess. You sometimes lose any gumption of being reasonable. Or see, for the longest time, I was under the impression of perfection as being the ideal. Jesus was perfect. I was supposed to be following in his footsteps. And so I need to be perfect, and my partner has to be Mr. Right, who is perfect. And so it kind of led me down a path of loneliness, you might say. But anyway, on campus, I did make contact with others who might consider themselves to be called homosexuals. But at that time also throughout the world, especially San Francisco and New York, there were the gay papers, The Advocate, and New York, it was the New York Native. Those papers showed me that all across the country, campuses were starting to have gay groups. Well, why not Fresno? And the thing is, I learned about the bars in Fresno at Fresno State. In fact, I think it was in the cafeteria, and overheard a conversation of the girls of the Golden West. Well, what's that? And so I found out the address, drove down from Fresno State down to Elm Avenue. Oh, there was a lot of cars around that place. And so I got up my nerve and I went into the bar, and there was a show going on, a drag show going on. And, I didn't know how to feel about that. To me, I'm more interested in masculine guys. I'm not really interested in people who put on dresses and try and imitate a woman. So it was a little strange, and I walked out fairly soon. It was a crowded bar and I didn't know anybody. So anybody I returned though, because it piqued my interest. And I did find a contact there, Doug, who worked at the Greyhound bus station, had lived in an attic in the old big house downtown Fresno. And so he took me home and we had an encounter. And I've had a few encounters with him, but it seemed to fizzle out. And besides, it takes a from North Fresno to South Fresno in those days, and it took even longer as the population grew. Now, of course, they have big freeways, but in those days we didn't. And besides, I was a poor student. All I lived on were my student loans, and in those days I didn't really have a lot of money for gasoline in the car. By the way, I was so lucky the way my parents loved me. They bought in 1966 a 10-year-old Chevrolet, 56 Chevrolet. It was a beautiful car. I don't know why in the heck I had to trade it in for a Volkswagen van, but I guess I wanted to be a hippie. And so anyway, I wish I'd kept that car. But anyway, gasoline, it was cheap in those days. Now it's horrendous. But I had to get around, and then I discovered by going there that there were other places. And so it was Franz Pine Lake Lodge to begin with for me. But and even so, that's a distance from the Fresno State all the way out to the north end of the freeway, north end of town, I mean. And but eventually there were bars in town. But you see there, I'm not really much of a drinker. And so I didn't have this interest in getting drunk. I didn't have the interest then of trying to meet someone and determine if that's Mr. Right inside of a loud, noisy bar. And so I thought there needs to be something else for gays to get together and find out about each other, to talk to each other, whatever. So that's where I thought there was a need for a group. The first thing that happened was going to the College Religious Center across the street from Fresno State. They had a seminar on homosexuality in the church in 1969. Now, this was a year after MCC had started in Los Angeles in 1968. So we took a trip. At the end of the seminar, he arranged, Jim White was the reverend in charge of the director of the religious center. He arranged for a bus to take us up to San Francisco on an overnight field trip. And so we went to the Glide Memorial Church and was going to camp out there. But we were free for the evening. It was Halloween weekend. And so a couple of us went towards the Beaux Arts Theater, Beaux Arts drag ball on Market Street. And, but I didn't really stay very long for that. You see, I'm not all that into it. And I met a communist. And so he took me back to the communist commune. And so I had a sexual experience there. And even though it was not that satisfactory, I am a homosexual. We can't get away from it now. And so I came back to campus, and of course, a lot was starting to happen then. Because of my religion and my beliefs about loving people and not hating them, not killing them, I was opposed to the Vietnam War. I was opposed to the selective service system. I looked it up on the congressional record, and what they approved was a matter of channeling. They wanted to channel the male population into the military, not the female population, just the male population. So quite a number, I don't know, 30% of my high school buddies went over there and got killed. Anyway, I didn't want to be a part of that. I looked for God's will in my life. And to me, and I prayed about it, and it turns out I had a struggle with the selective service system because in the fall of '68, I had dropped out of college to change my major from social work, from music to social worker, because I decided I could not be a perfectionist in music. It was much too hard for me to master the flute as well as others. And I just had this dream of being a music teacher, but it just didn't make sense if I couldn't master it.
So Larry, I have a little question for you. When you went to the first, the religious seminar on homosexuality across the street from Fresno State, was that a difficult decision? Like, did you have to ponder to think, do I want to go? Do I not want to go?
Oh, I wanted to go so badly.
In some way?
I wanted to go so badly. There was only a few people there, maybe 15 people there. So I know I was probably stepping out beyond the comfort level of a lot of people, but yeah, I really thought that was important. I guess I might have been nervous. I don't remember for sure right now. But I really felt it was important because there was nothing else going on, even at the college level. You know, in a way, Fresno State is so unique. It's like a different city than Fresno. And so it's supposed to be where you can have intellectual and conversations and everything, but they don't, you know. And where am I going with this? But anyway, that particular event was important to me because what happened after that was that some of us got approached by some others in Fresno that wanted to start a MCC church, Metropolitan Community Church, to be open to gay people that would probably be primarily gay because, you know, if you go there, then people are going to assume you're gay. Who could overcome the stigma and would have a church to go to. No church in Fresno would accept us at that time. And this is in the 60s. And so anyway, at the beginning of 1970, then we formed by having a meeting at the religious center. There were 12 of us, I guess, that had met there and decided to start the church. And we had to, but these are mostly unemployed people. They're very poor people, students. And so where's our money to have a facility and so forth? But we did have numbers that were less than 100, but we did reach 53. It was just like the GPU at that time. We started out with 8 people, well, actually just 3 of us, then 8 people, and we grew to 53 within 2 weeks or whatever. So anyway.
Well, the GPU, that's the Gay People's Union at Fresno State. Yes. That started in the late 70s, correct?
Yes, it was, actually it was 75. And there's just so many memories there. See, we really needed some place to go besides the bar. And on campus, we needed to know who else on campus is of our ilk, you might say. And so having a Gay People's Union would be an organization for socializing and educational purposes. So we formed a group on campus. They call it what it is. We're gay people. But at that time, they were building the student union. And so the emphasis was on union, but I didn't think we would be welcome there. I didn't think that we could feel free to be open. So anyway, we started the GPU there in 1975. I had first talked to Rich Newman, who came from San Francisco to be a student in social, graduate student in social work, and met him at the bathhouse that I was managing for men, Turkish Bath on East Street in downtown Kelowna. I said, I wish we had a gay group on campus. And he said, we really should have one. And so he and I got together, and then we met this woman, Chris Kovic, a philosophy student. She was a genius. Oh, she was so smart with words and notions and ideas. And she even wrote some things in our newsletter that was just so funny. And anyway, bringing back memories.
When you're talking about the newsletter, was that the Fresno Informer, or was that something
No,
else?
no, actually we called it the GPU newsletter. Just like when I was in MCC, we started a newsletter that we'd hand out copies in the bar, but we couldn't afford very many copies. So, 20 copies will go pretty fast. And so we did that with the MCC newsletter, and I got that going. So there'd be communication, with other people about what's happening. And but yes, the GPU newsletter then was not just about on campus, but we're out in the community, what's happening in our community. And so that got discussed, and that sometimes will be a 16 mimeograph page newsletter stapled together, and there would probably be 50 copies of that going to some bars. So
you don't happen to have any of those, do you?
Yes, those are being sent in my box that I'm sending off in a few days. That has the GPU newsletters, some samples of the church newsletters, and then the Fresno Informer. And I think that there was only like 7 issues of that, but it's original copies. So they're getting old and need to be taken care of.
They need to be preserved. I will let you know, your guys' constitution for the GPU is actually Sari Dvorkin donated that to the archive. So that is really the only mention of the GPU at Fresno State right now are those constitutional bylaws that you guys created.
Oh my gosh, I'm sending that too, but I'm glad to hear that. I wanted to ask what else has been contributed so far. Marsha was very involved when we started the Wildstein Democratic Club, and I wonder if she's contributed anything. I have a folder that's very thin about that, and I don't know if I still have the minutes of the Stonewall Democratic Club that we started. And I was secretary, so I typed up all the minutes. That should be in my Word documents, but I may have destroyed them. So I have to check on that before I ship off my boxes. But that's exciting to know she did that. It's like at the time I got so involved on that, and the war was just hanging over my head. In 68 was the worst year of all, with all the turmoil in the country. But it was also turmoil for me too then, as my dropping out affected the notifications of the selective service system. So then they had changed the draft so that I had a number coming up. And I thought, this is not right. I need to be in school, finishing my education. This is what God wants. My folks sacrificed all of their lives so that I could have a formal education. They didn't finish high school, and they worked so hard. My mother was a school bus driver, and my father was a sheet metal worker, and they really sacrificed for their 2 boys. And I was not having some military telling me I can't finish my education. And as I studied my, possibilities, I didn't want to turn up. I went to the anti-war rallies, but I couldn't see myself stepping up and throwing and burning my draft card as my friends would do. And so I didn't want to go to jail. And so I saw this information about conscientious objection, and I notified the draft board, and it took some months, but anyway, I eventually got certified as a conscientious objector to war and participation in the military. Anyway, I'm saying all this because it strongly impacted my life because it threw me into serving the country for 2 years instead of the military in a civilian capacity. And I offered to do that in the College Religious Center job that I had as a caretaker of the facility. And they didn't want to approve it. For one thing, Jim White had been on a radio program arguing with the state's director of the Selective Service System. And he won the argument, I think, sort of like in the Briggs Initiative, when some of our people, like Gary Lewis in Fresno, outshone the excuse me, I don't want to use the wrong term here, the butthole, then I'll call it that, who he was arguing with about the Briggs Initiative. So we were able to turn the table sometimes. But anyway, finish my point about the military. I served instead at the, because I applied for a job at Fresno County Welfare Department and got selected for the eligibility worker position. And so I got the Reed Clegg, to the director there, to approve my serving my 2 years in that facility. And so he filled out the form that went to the draft board, and I got assigned there, even though I'd already started, because it paid more than the College Relations Center. And so I was an eligibility worker for 2 years, and I decided that I didn't have enough money to return to school, so I'd work an extra year, and I did that in 1973. But you see, they had pay more wages in San Diego County, and I saw the notice and I applied. I thought, you know what? I've tried and struggled with MCC here in Fresno. It is so difficult to get these, well, nice word, the gay population out to church. And so I was not succeeding, you might say. They went through several or a couple transitions where it fizzled out and then started again. The men had arguments with the women, and the men had arguments with the women. The women had arguments with the men. And it was just like, and then we had kind of a crook as a pastor. And anyway, I moved to San Escondido to be in the North San Diego Welfare Department as an eligible worker there in 74.
So can I ask you a question? There's two things I want to ask about. One is, I know that you started and ran the Fresno Informer, and also you mentioned doing intern work at the LGBT Community Center. Was that the original, very first one that was out on Blackstone?
Well, I don't know of a center on Blackstone. I remember in 1975, we had a building we call the Fresno Community Center at the corner of Belmont, well, not on the corner, near the corner of Belmont and Fresno Street. That was a center that I knew about in 1975.
Then that's the center. I must have mistaken it for Blackstone, which is kind of funny because I actually lived at Fresno and Belmont at Lavender Lanes. So
that's the thing, you see, it was started by a couple of people in the Imperial Court who thought, well, for one thing, he was unemployed. And so, you know how that's going to go. So they got this cheap old house to pay rent for, or some person owning the real estate donated. I never did find out the exact details. But yeah, we did start it there. But you know, I think it only lasted 6 months.
Do you remember who in the royal court was that person?
Okay, now think carefully. Rack your brain. Chuck was the guy that kind of directed it. But I think his partner might have been, who was the queen, I think. I hate names leaving my brain.
That's okay. If I dropped a couple names, would it help ring a bell?
Yes, okay.
Bobby Christian?
That certainly rings a bell, yes. What's another name?
Darlene?
Darlene, that's the one I think was involved.
Okay.
Okay. I hate to say it though, so definite.
Those are pretty close because Jesse was the first and the fourth empress,
Yes,
and
yes,
Bobby Christian was the second and kind of the third, and then it was Jesse again, then it was Darlene, then it was Lisa, which is Les Gatewood. And I know he was involved with Gay United Services.
yeah, which was a time in which I had left Fresno.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know the names very well as the court. There again, you see, here's this institution, you might say, in Fresno, but I didn't really connect with it because of my hesitancy about the drag scene.
Mhm.
And yet they were so bold in so many ways. And it's a lot they did behind the scenes. In fact, I got in trouble over something I wrote in the Informer because it was the Briggs Initiative that I thought was so crucial. And I guess I didn't say it the right way, but this guy that had directed 2 fundraising events got very offended because I had stressed the importance of raising money for this struggling fight against the Briggs Initiative. It takes money to put ads in the newspaper. And what else are you going to do? Are you going to go before the cameras at the TV station and have any time to have an interview? Very unlikely in Fresno. But anyway, the point was, why can't we do more to raise money for this specific matter this particular year? But here they are out raising money for the charitable things that they're doing and helping the blind. I don't know who they were helping, I've forgotten now. But there were 2 things that he, this letter writer to the Informer, felt that I was way off base and attacking them for the things that they were doing. So I created dissension also. So, and through trying to inform people instead of bringing them together, I did a few things, I guess, that hit the wrong.
Well, you know, the Fresno Informer is considered to be the very first LGBT newspaper.
Yeah, it's like a newspaper, okay? Big, large paper going to the bars. And look at the articles. And as it grew, that was the other thing, Guy. He attacked me almost immediately as like a second issue. Okay, I'm not an editor, really, by training. And so I'm not the best wordsmith. I took a communication class at Fresno State, but I was not an expert at expressing certain things. And so anyway, as it went along, it really got appreciated. At first, we offended the girls and the women in Fresno because we had Frida of Fresno a column, and she tried to mention names and talk about seeing people around the community and running into people at Greyhound bus station or running into people at Red Lantern or wherever. And so, but the girls thought that was too, that's too slutty. Okay.
So Larry, you had told me a long time ago when we first met that one of the reasons that you left Fresno was that related to your activism here in the town, you had actually gotten death threats from someone.
Oh God, yes. I remember on Sierra Madre when I lived there, and the phone would ring and I'd pick it up and this guy was going to put a gun in my butt and pull the trigger. I had to hear a lot of nonsense like that. And you know, the thing is, I'm a little bit conspiracy oriented because I had JFK, my favorite hero, assassinated. And I never did have an explanation that was acceptable to me. I believe that there was more than one person involved. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I feel like of the things that happened to me, I think there really was a blacklist and my name was on it, whether it be working for the county or whether it be, what else is there? I mean, my employment things were affected. I was having a hard time getting a job. Of course, at that time, things were, in the late 70s, things were rough and inflation was running rampant. And so it was a rough time, but it seemed to happen to me particularly unreasonably. In other words, I applied to get the welfare job back, that I'd had earlier in the 70s. And I was #1 on the test that was taken. I was top of the list out of 300 people that took the application. I did not get that interview. Now, why was it that when I went for the interview, I passed by the hallway there where the supervisor had on his bulletin board, Larry Norton at Fresno State, starting a gay people's union. He came out against his Harvard Baptist Terrace Baptist Church. You know, why would a welfare office supervisor put on his bulletin board that a former employee got some attention for this activity years ago? Well, actually, it wasn't that many years ago at that time, but I was a former employee a few years prior. So anyway, to me, it was like there was something on my record. Don't rehire this guy. He's a troublemaker. He was here as a CO. He had to be here because of the draft board, and we don't want him back because he's a troublemaker. He's a faggot, and he can bring the department down. Just like the church said, I could split them apart. And I thought, you know, it's like the other thing is that I had been the manager of the only male whore. The Lens for Men was a Turkish bath. And Fresno people didn't understand what that's all about. And oh dear, I think I was a target is what I'm trying to say. So yes, I think I did go through my suffering there. And
where was this Turkish bath here in Fresno?
1551 East Street. Okay, it changed its name. Did have a new owner. Pardon?
It changed its name to the Steamworks.
To what?
Steamworks.
Yes, to Steamworks. Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it was called Gents for a while, then Steamworks. But I didn't follow all that so much because when I left, I was let go. I think they didn't like all of my activities in Fresno because I was becoming like a superstar or something. I don't know. And so Glenn Mooring was the owner. He owned several bathhouses throughout California, a straight guy, supposedly. And so his interest was the money. He was going to take advantage of us, just like a lot of the mafia taking over certain gay bars. So anyway, I lost a job and I didn't think it was, they just wanted to bring in a new guy, they said. And I had only been there like a year. I started out as just an attendant, but kind of took over when something happened to the other manager. So what I'm trying to lead up to is that experience where I saw someone in the bathhouse in one of the rooms with an open door, taking out his needle and injecting the other patrons. I don't know what they were injecting, but it had to be a drug of some sort. I kicked him out. I said, you're 80. I don't want you ever to come back. That was a Dr. Runyon, a doctor. He's known as a doctor in town. And here he is injecting people in the bar. I could occasionally hear marijuana, smell marijuana in there, but so I knew that happened. I smoked occasionally myself, but not in the premises. And anyway, it affected me because years within, as he went out the door of that bathhouse, he yelled at me that I'm gonna cause all kinds of trouble for the gay community. Couple of years, you're gonna see what you're doing. You're gonna be bringing this dreadful disease to the rest of the nation, and you are gonna be so hated because of you. And so I told a few friends, but they said he's just a disgruntled person because I took action to get him expelled. But you know, I started reading the New York Native articles. I had to know what was this new so-called gay disease in the 80s. And I had recalled that experience, but who do I tell? Who do I report this to? who are they going to believe? Is just sort of some disgruntled person, or is there something to it? Was this guy traveling between the bathhouses in California, and then these Californians were going to the East Coast? I mean, is that how it got spread? Because I was told eventually from the literature that I'm reading that it has to be blood contact, is how it's distributed. And so that has haunted me my whole life. And I just have to get it off my chest that I wish someone would someday explore that more fully, but they really can't because it's just me against the world. And so you see, I'm kind of a conspiracy nut in that sense because of the lived experience I had. And even though now they claim they understand it, one of those things like JFK that I have a hard time accepting, that how did the original virus get into the bloodstream of the gay population and not the straight population? And then I learned it was through the drug addicts sharing their needles. Anyway, I'm getting way off of the track. I know you didn't want to hear about all this.
Well, I am a little curious to know when you were working. You said you did some counseling at that original gay center at Fresno and Belmont. And so I'm kind of curious, what kind of services did they have? What kind of counseling did you do there?
It was not very heavy, I want to say, in a sense that I only had a couple of people I could refer to as far as mental health workers. And so mostly it's just me doing what peer counseling is, really where you're a part of the community who can talk to the community. It's not like you're a big authoritarian and it's you sermonizing with them. And so I wrote my report, which was in the files I'm going to be sending to Fresno, about that counseling experience. And it gives some details of the people that I dealt with and their problems. Because I was placed there under approval of the social work instructor, because we had to do field placement. We had to be placed some organization. And I thought, why not? The Gay Community Center is just getting started. And so it was like there was the phones that we covered. We tried to get the phone number out into the community. We got some phone calls, but not really too heavy. A lot of times it was Chuck in charge, and I think he arranged for some sex activity there when some of us weren't around. But I don't know for sure. Okay, but it was just interesting, some of the relationships that I saw develop. So it was not the most professional center. It was the first effort, though, that I'm aware of. Maybe there was counseling going on at the Imperial Court, but I don't think so. I think they had a different focus.
So when you started the GPU at Fresno State, who was your guys' academic advisor?
Say that one more time.
So at Fresno State with the Gay People's Union, did you guys have an academic advisor?
To have what?
An academic advisor, like a teacher or a faculty member.
Oh, we had to have an academic sponsor, yes. Dan Brown was the first one. He taught English. In fact, he had a gay literature class that I took. He was a sponsor, but kind of laid back. He didn't get, he was probably too busy writing his book. He wrote Among the Carnivores after he left. It was all about the Fresno State. He was a vegetarian. And so he's talking about in metaphors. In other words, how the other professors ate each other up, trying to gain superiority in the academics setting, and how the students had problems, whatever. I guess I'm in the book, but I don't know which character's name he gave me. But anyway, Dan Brown was the first one. And then we had a woman, Norton. I'll be darned. It's in the GPU newsletters that you'll be getting. I've forgotten her name. But speaking of that, though, I was in those years, and probably remains so to this day, that here I'm sticking my neck out. It was a big picture of me when we started it in the newspaper on campus with my long hair at that time. And uh, where are the college professors? You know, why aren't they helping us in the GPU? Why aren't they speaking out? There were all kinds of nasty letters in the letters to the editor about our organization, what we were doing, that we were being mocked or whatever. Why weren't people coming to our defense more often? And especially, you know, as it turns out, I had seen Lillian Faderman walking across the campus, going to the library, being so studious. I really admired that. I thought she was so great. I would so often see her in there, so dedicated to being a student. And then I understand she was a graduate and so dedicated to whatever English or whatever it was she was studying. Did we see any support from her? I remember a $10 check going to GPU that had her name on it. And that's all the support I know of. Now, maybe she did a lot behind the scenes, but here she was, a partner with Phyllis Irwin in the music department. You know, how are they helping us? And so there was a lot of resentment building on my part. I really shouldn't have as a Christian. But I guess because it was a struggle for me, and I never did graduate with a degree, by the way. So yes, I suffered. But
So
anyway, I'm getting
when did you
sidetracked.
move out of Fresno?
Pardon?
When did you leave Fresno?
Well, the first time then was after the Briggs Initiative in the last issue of December 78. I had fallen for Jim Copeman, the manager of Levitt's Furniture, from our meetings at the Red Lantern. And I thought I had found love. I thought I found someone who really cared about me. We could have nice intellectual discussions. He was a brilliant mind. But anyway, he said he needed to get out of Fresno and get down to Los Angeles where there are better paying jobs. And so would I go with him down to LA? And so as it turns out, we went to LA. I was, in fact, it was really strange. I've talked about conspiracies. Here I'm driving around in a nice van, a camper van, where I could even sleep out at the bathhouse in front of there. In fact, I got robbed there and became attention in the newspaper from some black guy. I didn't lock my van. I was so stupid and I fell asleep. Anyway, I was robbed there at the Fresno, at the Glenn's for Men Turkish Bath. But anyway, I get sidetracked again. Norton.
So you were down in LA with the guy from
And so we moved to LA. And what I was going to say about that was, unfortunately, the love of my life was not honest. I was honest with him. Before we had left Fresno, out in front of his apartment, I had parked. I don't know how they followed me or knew where I was, but that bank where I was 2 months behind, they missed that second payment, and they came after and took my van. And so I contacted the bank, and they said, well, unless you can pay us, you can't have that van. And so I was at the mercy of Jim Copeman then to be driven around everywhere. And I moved out of the apartment on Sierra Madre and moved over to his place. And so he rented the van and I helped him pay. We moved to LA. I got a job fairly soon. It was a couple of months. And he didn't have a job. And I thought, you know what? How can I support him on the meat I'm getting at this office job? And anyway, when it came to, I discovered in a drawer that he had a bank account with thousands of dollars. And here I'm struggling like hell. I gave him the complete story of my life. Honesty is the best policy, my mother told me, and I believed it all throughout. No one else believes it, but to me, it always works out in the end if you will just be honest with the other person, or honest in your dealings, honest in life, and honest with true the meanings of words and not twisting words. But anyway, Jim was not honest with me, and I couldn't see the future with him. And I moved out because I had just gotten that job, and I got a one room in an old hotel. They had a bed come down out of the wall. I had a little nook that was formerly a closet that I could put on. I had the bathroom with a shower and a sink. It was roughing it for a while. And so I become so interested in just living in that expensive town, that big population, that I kind of become a workaholic is what it amounted to. And all I could do was send money to organizations. I couldn't really have the time to even go to bars. I just didn't feel like socializing that much down there. And yet here it was, they had a Fresno, they had a Los Angeles Gay Community Center. They had so much going for them, but it just, I was depressed over the relationship breaking, and it was a sign of another failure in my life. So, psychologically, it just wore against me. But I stayed with that job for 11 years, from 79 to 90. And then my best friend that I had lived with in Fresno, so we knew each other for 18 years. But before that, final point, we had both been basically alone. And here we both had good jobs at that point. And the insurance companies want to know who our beneficiaries were. We named each other beneficiaries of our insurance because we thought we're going to be old maids and what we deserve to have property at some time in our life, to retire in or whatever. And he died of AIDS. And so I inherited $100,000, but I couldn't find property in LA for $100,000. At that time, it had just broken above that, really. And so, plus I never owned property, so I really didn't know how to look for it or evaluate it or whatever. I decided to go to Fresno because its property is less valuable there. And Bob Stowers, who's involved in real estate, connected with me. I connected with him anyway. And he eventually we saw a place on Fairmont Avenue in the old Fig Garden area. So I knew it was a nice area. It was a big ranch house. And I thought, I could have all kinds of activities here. And but it had such a large yard. It had one of those shake roofs I had to take care of. Anyway, the long story short, I spent too much money on that roof. $50,000 for a 50-year warranty on a metal roof. And that I never did get around to having a lot of people there. My partner threw my 50th birthday party there, and all kinds of the gay community turned out, and the neighbors across the street and around the block, they all showed up. It was a wonderful event. But I had to let go of that first house I had because I lost my job at Johnstone Supply that I had for 7 years. They were going to move over to the airport after being just close to Blackstone and Fresno Street on Thesta. And they didn't want Gail Tribble, the lesbian, or Larry Norton, the faggot, to work because they're Nazi Germanic attitudes. And I didn't really want to work for them anyway, but I didn't like being let go because I really got into being accounts payable clerk, administrative assistant, who had all kinds of hats. I mean, I answered the phones, I did the filing, I did the paying the bills, and there were $1 million of supplies they needed for that heating and air conditioning supply business. And so everything I was doing was okay, but I think it was because of the attitude. So there again, I thought discrimination is hitting me. And I didn't tell you the incident about Fresno County. I never did finish that story, did I? And how hire me at Fresno County, rehire me. And I talked to someone who said that worked at the county resource, what's the resource office called? But they said that they do have files that are marked DNR, do not, or DN something, do not rehire. And so I suspected I was a do not rehire. But because of that, I just went to the lawyers and asked to appeal as a discrimination case before the Fresno County. But at that time, the city attorney believed that the legislation in the state meant sex discrimination was gender discrimination. It did not say orientation, so it's not a matter of orientation. It's just that if you're a girl or a boy, you get discriminated against, then you have might have a legitimate case if you can prove that was what was going on. And I wanted to make the case that they were aware of my sexuality, and that's my openness about it was the reason why they didn't want me in the office. But anyway, that case got thrown out immediately. The National Gay Rights, what's it called? The National Lawyers Guild and the ACLU lawyers, they didn't really fight it as hard as I thought they should. I thought they should have appealed it, but anyway, they didn't have really the money or the fortunes available to stick their necks out in the hit town of Fresno over this matter. And so I felt that discrimination in 1976. Anyway, 77 came along, 78 was the Briggs Initiative, and the Informer really helped people come together during that time, and we did win in Fresno County against the Briggs Initiative, and it did not pass in the state. And so, remembering that Fresno Gay Community Center on Belmont, that was so unique to me in a lot of ways. Politically, we were the center of the state. And so we had Morris Kite coming from the Los Angeles area, Ray Brashers and Harvey Milk coming down to Fresno Community Center to discuss how we're going to, our strategy for fighting the Briggs Initiative. A lot of gay people didn't know that. You know, they did know about Harvey Milk. They did from our news informer, and they did know about Val, what's his name? Frank Val, coming to walk the state of California and doing some publicity against the Briggs Initiative. But anyway, the point is that paper really did stir things up. Things broke out. The women's group, they started a paper. I don't remember the name of it right now. And then when I left town, some of the people that had helped me on the Fresno Informer started the Front Runner, and it just took off from there. I don't know how or the details of Gay United Services taking over. You did so much that I'm just so unaware of. The community link was just, I guess it started the Fresno Informer. Do you recall?
I know that when you started some of the very earliest organizing here in Fresno. So, you know, when you talked about Darlene and those individuals that were with the Royal Court and with the it was probably just the Gay Center in Fresno at that time, at Fresno and Belmont, the Fresno Informer, the Metropolitan Community Church of the Vineyard, the
Yes,
Gay
it
People's
did. It did
Union.
eventually. They got their shit together. Yes.
So all of those things, you're the person that I know that really kind of was the generator or the starter of many of these items. And so you've mentioned a lot of people by name that I know were part of that early pioneers of the LGBTQ community. I know when you left was right probably before the 80s hit. You went down to LA area, then you came back in the 90s. And that's when I'm going to think with the Fresno Informer, it was probably Gordon Young and Dick Bevanall.
Yes. Oh,
you know,
yes.
and they were part of Gordon Young, particularly with the Fresno Front Runner, Kay Vanderford with the Front Runner, Cindy Williams with the Front Runner, Cindy Williams and Catherine Burrell at the Gay People's Union with you and Marcia Koenig. So you're bringing up names and people that are known to us and that are still around that we can contact to get more collaborating information.
Oh, please do, please do. I mean, they're bound to have some kind of testimony. You know, it impacted their lives. And they were so important for them to speak out in the ways that they did. Um, yeah, so as far as contributions, have you done a lot of interviews for this project so far?
Yes, with the Quistry Oral History Project, we've interviewed Bill Wassenbeck, and we've interviewed Cindy Williams, Jesse Villalobos, who is Empress 1 and 4. So we've probably have about 20 to 25 oral interviews that we've conducted. Marcia Koenig's been interviewed. We're trying to reach all those people before they forget the activities they did, or they are no longer with us.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind, or whatever. But just like me, if you really get them going, I'm sure they could spin a good tale or whatever.
One of the things that we did when Dr. Faber got involved with our project was related to Fresno LGBT Pride, Fresno Rainbow Pride.
Yes.
We wanted to talk about the history of all of the LGBTQ bars that had existed in Fresno.
Yeah.
And so we got involved with that, and that's how Kat Faber got involved with us. And we sat down and we had what we call a convening. We invited all of these people to come and share their memories of the Girls of the Golden West, and the Hangout and the Hideout and the Express and Fran's Covered Wagon and Fran's Pine-like Lodge and Red Robins and all these establishments that have existed at some point. And they sat down, there were probably about 30 of us. We sat down at a restaurant that closed for us named Tacos Marquitos, and the memories just started. Someone would share something that says, oh my God, I remember that, and here and here and here. Queen Mother Billy unfortunately passed away this last year.
Yeah.
But her family bequeathed all of her belongings to the Quistry Project.
Okay.
And so there are the original Girls of the Golden West and the Fran's Pine Lake Lodge, their drag show lineups of all the performers and what they were performing. God. And original checks from the original court system, the stubs, the check stubs, or like a carbon copy of their check for when they were giving money to their charities. So there's a lot of great information, minutes, financial reports, posters, flyers, and we're gathering all this stuff. We just need to get a little bit more proactive on getting Fresno State to get a little bit more committed to the archives that have already been established. We need them to put into place their monthly contribution so that people could put it on their credit card and make a monthly donation pledge, and also do a tax write-off. So the credit cards, the monthly payroll reduction, and those things, once we get that going, our plan is to have a large exhibition at Fresno State. They have a beautiful room. It's called the Elliptical Room in the Henry Madden Library, which is like a 2-story tall open space that we could display many of these artifacts that we're collecting. So the ideal is to collect physical artifacts and to also then do these oral interviews like we're doing right now, Larry.
Very good. That's excellent. You know, that ticked off my mind. I remember in the Fresno Informer, we had Toby of Toby's book, used bookstore. I think he might have been a partner with who'd you just mention? With not Jesse, the mother. Billy, okay, with Billy. I don't know if they were roomed together or what, but they went to a lot of places together. And he had an article in the Fresno Informer explaining that in 1953, there was a place called the Wacoma.
Yes.
Did you hear about that? Do you remember that? And
yeah,
so
we have there was a lovely woman that was involved with us and was one of our first interviews. Her name is Audrey Wilson. And she talked about the gay Wacoma and how people from LA and San Francisco would come there because at that time it was Golden State was the
Yes,
main freeway. And
yes,
people would stop between LA and San Francisco there. And then lots of out of town LGBT folks would go there.
yeah.
So yes.
That was considered the first, as best as I know. But then later was Gus and Doris's that was populated by some. This is not mostly on the west side, I understand. I think it was Whitesbridge Road. But anyway, that was male and female. But I guess if you got drunk enough or whatever, that's where some gay activity will get started. Okay. So it was a contact place, is what I'm trying to say. And then I think another one right after that might have been, what was, the Stardust, I think they called it. But that might have been after Pine Lake Lodge.
I haven't heard of the Stardust. That's one that hasn't come up on our radar yet.
You might check that out, because according to Toby, that was, I think it might have even been Fran and Gail of the, who after they got rid of the lodge, started the Stardust down on, not
On
McKin-
Whitesbridge?
Well, it might have been just McKinley, or Clinton. It was closer to the freeway anyway. I forgot. I don't know. But anyway, Toby mentioned it. So I remember when I was going through the Informer the other day, before I shipped them off, discovering that he had these little tidbits right there in the paper to help people understand their history. So anyway.
Very important artifacts, very important documents that will help us have a better understanding of how we as a community survived when it was illegal. You could be arrested, you could be institutionalized, you could be lobotomized. For people to kind of understand how brave it was to live your authentic self and be who you were.
Yeah, you know, I remember Radio Park was a place to meet. And so that's over near the county museum. And some of us would park in the back street, that side, instead of the, is it Fresno Street? And because there was a restroom on Fresno Street next to the gas station. And but I remember one day I had my arm sitting on the open window. It was nice, warm, beautiful, you know, those nice Fresno warm evenings. And my arm was on the open, on the hanging out the door, you might say. And someone walked up asking me, what time do you have? You know, that's a common question among a lot of people. But anyway, so I'm the friendly guy and just answer him anyway. And he wanted to, and said, give me all your money. I said, I don't have any money tonight. And he had his, I don't know, a car was coming by or something. So he grabbed on my arm and it pulled off my watch, and he got away with my watch. It was a cheap watch, but he got away with it. And I didn't have my life, you know, I saved my life somehow with him taking the watch. But yeah, we experienced things in that town that we just shouldn't have. But we did get out to, I went out to Kearney Park and did some cruising. But, you know, I always thought there was a reputation of the gangs going through that park. And so there again, it was probably a discrimination against the Latino side of town. Sorry, I just wasn't with it that time. Well, I was ignorant about what goes on, and I was afraid. Okay, so a lot of things happen when you're afraid that you lose control. Anyway, besides that, there were other places. The Fresno was Roding Park, but you know, it had a lot of family interactions there, and I didn't have a lot of nerve to really waste a lot of time just sitting for a single person to come by that I could talk to. So it kind of fizzled at Roding Park, but other people I might have been successful. But the point is, we kind of had to go out and just be furtive. What's the word? We had to be careful anyway, where we went and what we did. And it was a struggle. Yeah.
So Larry, I have a question for you that's more current. I don't know what your current living situation is, but when you left, you were with someone named Lawrence. Are you and Lawrence still together?
We're still together. We're going to have our 29th anniversary
Wow, congratulations.
on New Year's Eve this year. And so, yes, we're together. He's still doing his music. He's still writing songs about the gay experience and other experiences. Right now, he's just released yesterday or re-released his video on YouTube of Oh Holy Night to get into the Christmas season. And
I was thinking about Lawrence, and I have a CD of his when I had him on the radio show.
oh, is that right? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I was just thinking of him, but it's because I knew I was going to be interviewing you, and I was just curious to know where everybody was at.
Yeah,
I think it's lovely that you're up in British Columbia. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it is. But we've kind of we first got here and we became involved with a guy that wanted to have the gay seniors of Fresno. And so we started a group called the Gay Seniors of Kelowna, I mean. And, but his personality, he just had to be in charge. He wouldn't let other people have their say even, let alone their way. And it became a personality clash. And he kind of turned off more people than he turned on. So it really kind of fizzled over a couple of years. And so we're not involved as a lot of others. But and then he himself resigned, supposedly, because he was accused by somebody in the community of talking on the internet with an underage child.
Mm.
Okay, and instead of it being an adult or being a senior even, he was taken in to counsel over the internet, and he had to get his name away from the group.
So Larry, how old are you right now?
Now I'm 73, okay, being born in 1948. So I hope I have some more years but when I retired, I thought I would sit down and write a book about the Fresno experience and have it in writing. Then that would be my legacy. I don't have children, so, but you know,
well, what I wanted to point out is you started in '68 here in Fresno.
Yeah.
And you have continued all the way into your 70s of still being involved with the LGBTQ community and being active. So when you talked about doing a gay seniors group in the area you're living in, you're just a role model for folks to say you can continue to contribute and be part of things and make changes all the way through the end of your life.
Oh, most definitely. You have to be yourself. You have to a little bit assert your no fear. Okay. See, that there again, it's my religion. Jesus taught me, fear not. He didn't say fear not sometimes. He just fear not, period. Don't ever be afraid. Okay. Do not be living in fear. You express yourself. Now, in my case, it's a matter of witnessing to the world. And because I have that Southern Baptist evangelism in me, I have to go out and almost convert everybody to the right way of living. And so, yeah, you can do it till the day you die. Get out there and be gay, be happy.
And I think that that's a great segue for us to end. I'd like to get back together with you at some other point and maybe targeted some type of discussion around some of the stuff you shared today.
That's fine. In fact, you may want to review the material I send and then formulate some questioning. But if not, that I could do it before then. For one thing, I'm not sure how fast I can get this stuff packaged.
Well, I'll tell you, I can't wait to see the things that you're going to send in. The newsletter from the GPU and from Metropolitan Community Church, those type of things are things that I have not seen and would love to look at that kind of stuff.
Yeah. There weren't a lot of copies, for mass production, but I'd still have a couple of each issue. So,
well, I think that that's fantastic. So that's really wonderful. I'm so happy that Kat got in touch with you, Dr. Faubert, so that we could do this. And I look forward to chatting with you again.
Yes, I'm just very sorry that I didn't stay in closer contact with the folks in Fresno, but life goes on.
It does. It does
Yeah,
for all of us.
yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, I'll stop the recording right now. So do that. You both gave me so many goosebumps. It was wonderful.